Jujutsu sorcerer. Am I right? Yeah, I'm right. I'm pretty clever.
Whatever. Its name doesn't matter right now.
Barriers are pretty complicated, aren't they?
Hey, boss, what you doing? Oh, you know, just watching JJK, the #1 anime of the season. You know it's not #1, right? Huh? Just check the charts. Okay, let's have a look. Are you When I say I am a slave to shonen anime and manga, I'm talking pre-Abraham Lincoln type shit. This genre of anime literally has my entire body chained up, and only by the actions of a higher power could I ever be free from my confinements. I know this because I've been through the exact same cycle countless times at this point. Considering the fact that Daddy Shonen Jump has a tendency to start serializing like 5 different new series at once these days, I obviously don't have the time to keep up with every single new release. However, usually, without fail, I'm going to see what's the next new thing whether I want to or not when it eventually pops up on my Instagram feed. First comes annoyance, then comes anger, then all of a sudden I'm sitting down in my room with nothing to do, and before I know it, I'm already caught up with every single chapter of the series that was previously pissing me off by its mere presence. Now that being said, I'm thankfully not so far gone that I'll start claiming that every single thing to come out of this genre to be the best thing to ever exist. I'm certainly not gonna claim that something like Demon Slayer or My Hero Academia are super deep philosophical works of art, nor am I going to pretend that Bleach is somehow not dog shit anymore just because the anime came back with nicer animation. I like to think that even if I do have a soft spot for these types of series, I'm still able to point out its flaws and talk about it in a productive manner. Admittedly, there's obviously going to be some level of bias considering the fact that I'm really forgiving towards a show as long as it keeps me from being bored, and apparently that's very easy to do when 80% of the anime revolves around blood-pumping action mixed with banger music. Speaking of said combination, that's actually a pretty good way to describe the show we're going to be talking about today. Jujutsu Kaisen is a manga series created by Gege Akutami. In the present day, it's one of the most popular manga that's being published under Weekly Shonen Jump, and as of the time of this recording, the second season of the anime is also the second highest ranked show of the fall season. A ranking that is complete bullshit in my opinion, since Frieren doesn't even come close to how good this show is. The fandom is low-key retarded though.
Proud opened up his domain. He said, you are strong because you are, I am you. Or are you the one who left it all behind? And his
Believe it or not, I find this shit funny. Look, I'll cut straight to the chase. I fucking love this show. We've had a lot of surprisingly good anime come out this year, but JJK is easily the second best thing to have aired in 2023, falling just short behind Vinland Saga Season 2, and that's saying something. Hence, to see it get a lower rating than some boring-ass show about some autistic elf with her retarded companions, not gonna lie, it kinda hurts. Therefore, considering the fact that I just made a video taking a fat, smelly shit on Beyond Journey's End, I figured why not make a little video essay for Jujutsu Kaisen too, since it's something I'm genuinely passionate about and it gives me a chance to make a positive video for a change. Full disclaimer though, majority of this video is most likely going to be me glazing this series, so...
If you're not a fan of the words, peak fiction, goat, raw, fire, click off of the video.
Here we go!
The story of Jujutsu Kaisen takes place in modern-day Japan, and it follows the journey of a young man named Yuji Itadori, a first-year high school student. Yuji is just your average Joe trying to make his way through life. He's a member of the Occult Research Club who spend the majority of their days investigating worthless, strange rumors of supernatural activities in hopes of uncovering some sort of paranormal mystery. Although he doesn't exactly have an exceptionally high interest in ghost stories or anything of that nature, he enjoys the club either way because the other 2 members are decent and it allows him to leave early so he can go to the hospital to visit his ill grandpa, who's the only family member left in his life. Unfortunately, he doesn't stick around for too long though, as he dies immediately in the first episode. During his final moments, the old man tells Yuji that he's a strong kid and that he should use that strength to help people, even if it's only those closest to him. While I wouldn't exactly call this scene an emotional masterpiece or anything, I do think it deserves some level of appreciation simply for the fact that it doesn't pretend like this is supposed to be a super sad scene or anything, unlike some other anime I know. Like in Cyberpunk Edgerunners, I didn't give give a shit when David's mom died because she didn't have any scenes to get to know her in the first place, and yet, despite that, the show drags out her death as if it's supposed to be the saddest thing in the world. David spends majority of the second half of the pilot moping, getting pushed around, and having his life get progressively worse all the while tragic music is playing in the background. It was like getting bashed over the head with a hammer multiple times while the writers were telling you to be sad for some bitch I barely even knew. Sometimes, less is more, and Jujutsu Kaisen illustrates that perfectly here. Like I said, the scene isn't super deep, but it does exactly what it's supposed to do. There's no sad music blaring, it doesn't overstay its welcome, and it plays out with just the right level of emotional investment that allows you to sympathize with the main character.
Save the people you can, even if it's only those closest to you. Just save as many as you can, even if you can only save one. When you die, you should be surrounded by people. Don't end up like me.
Those simple, dying words from his grandpa carried more weight and impact than David's mom's entire existence, and seeing Yuji silently holding back tears as he calls the nurses was a genuinely kind of desponding scene. I actually feel pretty bad for the guy. Despite this, Yuji's not given much time to mourn though, as right after his grandfather's death, he's immediately approached by Megumi, a Jujutsu sorcerer in training. So as it turns out, one of the haunted objects that Yuji and his club members picked up during one of their escapades was actually an extremely dangerous thing called a special great cursed object, and it was originally put near the school to serve as a protective talisman of sorts. However, the seal for said object has weakened, and if not retrieved, it could serve as a lure to attract cursed spirits, horrendous monsters created from negative energy generated from negative emotions of humans. Every single human exudes a certain level of cursed energy, but Jujutsu sorcerers are gifted individuals who are able to control and manipulate cursed energy, as well as having a larger amount of it in comparison to regular humans, which gives them some unique superpower of sorts. Hence, sorcerers are the only ones who can get rid of these evil spirits and are secretly employed by the government to do so. Unfortunately, Yuji doesn't have the cursed object on him anymore, and to make matters worse, his two club members were staying back at the school with the intention of taking off the talismans in hope of carrying out their occult mumbo-jumbo, prompting both Yuji and Megumi to rush back to the school before things get too ugly. Long story short, a cursed spirit ends up attacking the school, and through a series of events, Yuji is forced to swallow the cursed object, and while this does give him the power he needs to kill said spirit, he gets possessed by Sukuna, the cursed spirit that resided within the object.
What a wonderful era to be reawakened. Women and children are crawling everywhere like maggots. How marvelous! It'll be a massacre!
Thankfully, despite having to mentally fight him off a bit, Yuji is able to push down Sukuna's influence and maintain full control of his body. Unfortunately for him though, this is not quite good enough for the higher-ups of the Jujutsu world. As it turns out, Sukuna is actually an all-powerful false god with 4 arms and is widely recognized as the King of Curses, who wants to do nothing but destroy the world. He's been able to continue living for centuries by splitting up his body into 20 cursed objects that take on the form of his indestructible fingers. Due to the fact that they can't destroy the fingers, they had no way of getting rid of Sukuna completely. That is, until Yuji came along and ate one of the fingers. Yuji is the only person who's been able to become Sukuna's vessel without being completely possessed by the demon. Theoretically, if Yuji were to die, then Sukuna would die with him. That leaves Yuji with 2 choices. He can either die now, or become a Jujutsu sorcerer and help track down the rest of the fingers. Once all of them have been collected though, he will have to consume them and be executed either way. I don't think I need to tell you which option he chose. Now right off the bat, you might be saying that that sounds like an extremely simple and bare bones plot, and you would be absolutely right. In the grand scheme of things, there is absolutely nothing unique or brand new about Jujutsu Kaisen. The plot is pretty much as simple and straightforward as you could possibly get from a shonen anime. What you see is what you basically get. That being said though, that simplicity is actually the thing that makes this show so enjoyable in the first place. If you're a regular viewer of this channel, then you would know that I have absolutely no problem with minimalistic storytelling. In fact, if I'm being completely honest, I actually have a much more enjoyable time watching something that requires very little thinking, as it allows me to just sit back and enjoy the spectacle. Now don't get me wrong, like everything in life, there are obviously levels to the amount of bullshit that I'm willing to forgive and let slide. For example, I absolutely fucking hated God of High School because while it did have really good fight animations, the writing was completely abysmal. While I am well aware that it wasn't meant to be some extremely complex piece of literature or anything of the sort, it focused way too much on throwing fight after fight after fight after fight in our face that it forgot that there was supposed to be an actual plot mixed in there. Spectacle fighting is completely fine. I love a good superpowered slugfest to get the blood pumping, but but not at the expense of the story, which was practically non-existent by episode 4 because they couldn't focus on a single thing for more than a few minutes before introducing more characters for completely no reason. There's a difference between a turn your brain off show and a show that can only be enjoyed if you turn your brain off. Thankfully, this is not the case for Jujutsu Kaisen, as it's able to actually strike a really good balance of showcasing amazing fight scenes while at the same time making sure that the story stays coherent. Sure, there's definitely a few scuffles that were simply there for the heck of it, but for the most part, almost every single battle the protagonist gets into is relevant to either the overarching plot or whatever mini arc the characters are going through, which gives the encounters much more weight to them and never makes you feel as though you're watching something pointless. Additionally, the world of JJK is not only really entertaining to watch, but it's also legitimately pretty interesting. Despite taking place in modern-day Japan, the supernatural elements added in the form of cursed spirits and cursed techniques are incredibly fascinating purely because of how great they showcase these abilities within the fights. Sure, they're not 100% original, some of them are definitely derived from other pieces of entertainment, but you can be sure that JJK will provide an interesting spin or at the very least present them in a captivating way. For example, this wrinkly old ballsack plays a guitar and uses his body to amplify the sound to send out waves of energy. He's essentially a living speaker. This dumb bitch uses fucking voodoo magic to fight her enemies, using the nails, dolls, and everything. This beautiful bastard creates weak points on your body in the form of lines that he can cut you up into ratios. He's literally doing math while chopping you to pieces. This complete utter piece of garbage is capable of twisting and reshaping your entire body with a single touch. You see this thing? This thing is a panda. His power is literally just the fact that he's a walking, talking panda that also transforms into a monkey. This all sounds really over the top and stupid due to the way I'm describing it, and to be completely honest, it kinda is. The over the top part, I mean. A lot of these abilities are actually really well thought out and have really good explanations as to how they're supposed to function, for the most part. They even have an explanation for why they're explaining their abilities to the enemy. This stupid fucking shonen series actually gave a reason as to why they just give information to their opponents. I fucking love this show.
Damn! That shit good!
Now, although the power system and world are admittedly very interesting, an intriguing setting can only take you so far unless you have engaging characters to go along with it. Now, I'm just going to be completely frank here. If you come into this show expecting to find some extremely complex characters who have super deep reasons as to why they are the way that they are, then you're watching the wrong anime, buddy. Almost every single one of these characters, especially those within the main cast, are incredibly bare bones and straightforward. Some of them are straight up just walking, talking archetypes. It's just not as boring to see because they utilize set tropes in the best way possible. I'm being serious. The majority of them have really simple goals and motivations, like wanting to protect their loved ones, or just wanting to find entertainment in this mundane life. That being said though, this seems to be an intentional writing choice on the author's part. As I've previously mentioned already, the show never ever pretends as if the plot or characters are any deeper than what they actually are. It's fully aware that there's nothing complex to these characters and instead just focuses on trying to utilize them in the most effective way possible for their specific roles, instead of tossing aside and pretending as if all the cliches and tropes that we've all come to know and love is so beneath him like some pretentious faggot. Gege instead embraces said tropes and showcases them in an entertaining way that genuinely rekindled my love for them, which basically means he just went go big or go home. Besides, I know I say these characters are really simplistic, but that's not to say that they don't have any level of depth to them whatsoever. Take Yuchi for example, who is by far one of the most likable protagonists that I've seen in a good while, and by that I mean I genuinely adore this kid as opposed to being completely apathetic to his existence or outright hating his guts. He's a genuinely nice guy who's been put into an unfortunate set of circumstances, and to make matters worse, the show does not hold back when it comes to continuously piling the amount of terrible shit that happens in his life. However, he still tries his very best to maintain his cheerful, upbeat, optimistic self for the sake of those he cares about, in spite of the fact that life itself seems to despise him being happy. On the surface, he might seem like your stereotypical Boy Scout main character, but unlike someone like Tanjiro, who's so stupidly kind that it's annoying, Yuchi's personality goes through various different phases as his environment forces him to toughen up and become less passive and less naive. Sure, he might be an extremely kind and sweet person at heart, but not to an unbelievable degree. Like any normal human being, he has moments of anger, selfishness, malice, and even pure devastation. Honestly, considering all the shit that he's had to go through, it would be completely understandable if his attitude took a turn for the worse. Yet, despite this, his anger never gets to a point where it's misguided. Instead, when you know it, he's able to mature and grow as a character to where he's no longer a goody two-shoes Boy Scout without becoming a retarded moody edgelord in the process. Unlike some characters I know. Aside from Yuji though, the side characters are also quite enjoyable and do well in their respective roles within the story. We've got Megumi, the supposed second main character of the series and resident cool moody guy of the group. When it comes to first impressions, he doesn't exactly make a bad one, but he also wasn't super impressive either. His curse technique just came off as really underwhelming at first, and I honestly thought he was going to be just another Sasuke type character, where his existence is just to be a rival for the protagonist. But over time, it eventually becomes clear that that was obviously not the case. Megumi, despite his grumpy attitude, is actually a really nice guy. He just has a really hard time showing it because of the way he was raised. There is no sense of rivalry at all between him and Yuji. Instead, the two of them grow to be really good friends who openly care and look out for each other. And as for the issue of his powers seeming as though they were underwhelming at first, Season 2 fixed that pretty well. Then we have Nobara, who is, in her own words, the obligatory female of the group, who thankfully is not just here as a prop for fan service. Gojo, the extremely overpowered sensei character that looks like he could pass off as Kakashi's brother if he really wanted to. All things considered, Gojo is definitely the one that stands out the most purely because of how fucking broken he is, but his overwhelming strength is balanced out by the fact that the villains of this show are fucking ruthless. Jujutsu Kaisen makes it very apparent from the get-go that cursed spirits are absolutely no joke, especially those classified in the special class. This is made very apparent when Yuji and Megumi actually almost die fighting one on the 4th episode of Season 1, where Yuji himself might have permanently lost an arm if not for the fact that there's a demon inside him. Speaking of Sukuna, he is by far one of my favorite villains in modern day shonen, and also one of the best implementations of the sealed evil power inside the main character trope that I've seen in a long time. The dude is so gleefully and unapologetically evil that it's actually so cool to see, and although he might come off as one-dimensional, I would argue that it makes perfect sense that he is the way that he is. The motherfucker has spent literally centuries killing and murdering humans to the point that he himself became a cursed spirit just so he can keep doing so, becoming the living embodiment of a creature made of negative emotions. It's completely believable that he's not going to pull a Kurama and change his ways just because he's in the body of a talkative retard. While he is technically the only person who ever stood a chance against Gojo, the group of villains made up of disaster type curses aren't to be taken lightly either, as they're all pretty much capable of killing every single sorcerer if not for the existence of Gojo, which again kinda justifies why that white-haired bastard is so fucking broken compared to everyone else in the cast. Lastly, there's Geto.
Tell me, do you have any last words?
No matter what anyone tells you, I hate those monkeys.
Oh my god, he's literally me.
So just dance, 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 come on. All those things I shouldn't do, but you dance, dance.
In conclusion, JJK is, as previously stated, one of the best representations of shonen anime that I have seen in a long time. While you could make the argument that it's just your average by-the-numbers shonen, I'd much prefer a straightforward and simple story that does things right, over an overly complicated and contrived piece of pretentious garbage that thinks it's oh so deep when it's actually some of the most boring schlop around. By the way, there were quite a number of people that claimed that I simply don't like slow stories and that I just didn't like layered characters after my free run review, and my retort to that is, yeah, pretty much. Call me a tard all you want, but if you're seriously telling me that you take a walking simulator with a retarded elf over literally this, then I don't know what to tell you, man. In fact, let me piss you off even more. The characters in JJK, every single one of these guys, including even Ichichi, they're all better than anyone in Frierin's roster. Okay, maybe that's not fair. Stark is slightly better than Ichichi. C tier for... But hey, enough about that. It's about time I asked the real question.
Nah, I'd win stood proud as the one who always bets on the one who left it all behind, he proclaimed to Joe Goat. I'm you because you're the plumber, or are you the fingerer because with this treasure I summon the overwhelming intensity of malevolent kitchen? Joe Goat responded calmly.
Eternally blue will spread its wings. Eternally blue is flying free. Soaring through the present all the pretty lies. I'm reaching out of heaven, I seem to find you. Something like love and it turns on the cheeks. A colorful pain and a falling of dreams.